There have been accusations against you, things said about who you are, judgments made about what you deserve, cases built by people who did not have the full story, who saw one chapter and called it the whole book, who witnessed one season and declared a verdict about your entire life. But chosen one, there is a higher court, and the judge who sits in that court has reviewed your case, every piece of evidence, every witness, every charge, and the verdict has been handed down. All charges dismissed. Number one, the accusations of people are not the final verdict on your life. You have been accused, maybe openly, maybe quietly behind closed doors, maybe in the whispers that traveled further than the people who started them intended, words spoken about your character, judgments formed about your intentions, conclusions drawn about who you are based on partial information and personal bias. Those accusations felt heavy. They had weight because they came from people whose opinion once mattered, or from people who had influence over spaces you needed access to, or simply because when something untrue is said about you enough times, it begins to have a texture that feels almost real, even when you know it is not. But hear this clearly. The accusations of people are not the final verdict on your life. They are not the authoritative judgment of a court that has the full record. They are the opinions of limited witnesses who do not have access to everything that is true about who you are, what you have been through, or what God has said over your existence. The highest court has already reviewed what they said, and the judge who sits in that court is not moved by gossip, by bias, or by the persuasive confidence of people who thought they had you figured out. He is moved by truth, and the truth of your life, seen fully and fairly, produced a verdict that no human accusation can overturn. Number two, God is your defender, and he does not lose cases. There is a name for the role the enemy plays in the court of heaven, the accuser of the brethren. Scripture does not hide the reality that accusations are made, that a case is built, that arguments are presented about why a chosen one is not worthy, not called, not deserving of what God has promised them. But there is also an advocate, one who stands in that court on behalf of the chosen one who cannot fully defend themselves, who presents the full record, who reminds the court of the blood that covers what the accuser has brought as evidence, who argues not on the basis of the chosen one's perfection, but on the basis of something far stronger than perfection: grace, redemption, the finished work that makes every charge brought against the chosen one, one that has already been addressed. God is your defender. And when God defends a case, the outcome is not uncertain. When he stands on your behalf, the accuser does not prevail. Not because the charges were always without basis, but because the grace that covers your life is greater than every charge that can be brought against it. You are defended, and the defense has prevailed. Number three, every false accusation has a purpose in the formation of a chosen one. This is the part that takes time to receive. The accusations that were false, the judgments that were wrong, the verdicts that people reached without the full picture, they were not only injustice, they were also formation. Every chosen one in Scripture who was falsely accused came through the accusation carrying something they did not have before it. Joseph falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, Daniel accused by the administrators who could find no fault in him but manufactured charges anyway. Jesus himself, the most unjust trial in history, every charge brought against the one in whom no fault existed. And in every case, the accusation was not the end of the story. It was the door through which the next level of the story was entered. Joseph went from the false accusation to the prison, from the prison to the palace. The accusation was not a detour from his destiny. It was the path to it. Your false accusations have been doing the same thing, forming your character, deepening your dependence on God, teaching you that your identity cannot be found in what people say about you, because what people say about you is subject to their limitations, their bias, and their incomplete information, and leading you to the place you are standing now, where the highest court has reviewed everything brought against you and issued its verdict. Dismissed, not because you are without need of grace, because grace has already addressed everything that needed to be addressed. Number four, the charges against you were reviewed by someone who knows the full truth. Human courts can be wrong. Human judges can be biased. Human verdicts can be influenced by the quality of the argument, the persuasiveness of the witness, the mood of the room, the incompleteness of the evidence presented. Human justice is imperfect because the people who administer it are imperfect. But the court that reviewed your case is different. The judge who presided over your case had access to every piece of evidence that exists, not just what was presented by the accuser. Everything, every moment of the story your accusers did not see. Every prayer you prayed in private. Every time you chose integrity when no one was watching. Every genuine act of faith that happened between you and God with no audience and no applause. Every tear, every battle, every moment of choosing right when wrong would have been easier. All of it was in the record. And the judge who reviewed the complete record, not just the version the accuser presented, came to a verdict that reflects the complete truth. Not the partial truth that built the case against you, the full truth. And the full truth, seen in its entirety, produced a different verdict than the one your accusers intended. All charges dismissed. Not because you are perfect, because the full truth of your life is not what the accusations said it was. Number 5, dismissed does not mean ignored. It means the case has been considered and found without merit. There is an important distinction in the word dismissed. It does not mean the charges were never taken seriously. It does not mean they were waved away without consideration. A dismissal in court is not a dismissal of the process. It is the conclusion of the process. The full review has happened. The evidence has been examined. The arguments have been heard. And after all of that, the verdict is that there is not sufficient ground for the case to proceed. The case against you was taken seriously. God is not cavalier about accusations. He does not dismiss what is brought before him without consideration. He examined it fully. Every piece, every argument, every witness the accuser called to testify against who you are and what you deserve. And after the full examination, the verdict stands. The case has no merit that survives the light of the full truth. The charges that looked compelling when assembled by someone with a limited view and a hostile agenda did not hold up under the scrutiny of a judge with complete information and no bias. Dismissed. Fully. Finally. Without appeal. Because the case was reviewed by the only court whose verdict on your life is actually authoritative. Number 6. The people who brought charges against you were working from incomplete information. Grace toward the people who accused you is possible when you understand this. They were not working with the full picture. They could not be. No human being has access to the complete record of another person's life, intentions, relationship with God, and the context of every decision they have made. They saw what they saw, and from what they saw, they drew conclusions. Those conclusions were wrong. Not necessarily because they were malicious people, though some accusers are, but because they were limited people working from limited information. They did not see the full context. They did not know the full story. They judged one chapter without reading the whole book. They formed a verdict about your character from a small sample of circumstances that did not represent the whole of who you are. God saw everything they missed, and what he saw changed the verdict. You can extend grace to imperfect people who drew imperfect conclusions from imperfect information. That grace does not mean the accusations were right. It means you understand the limitation that produced them. And it frees you from carrying the weight of their wrong verdict into the season where God's right verdict is now operating. Number 7, walk out of the courtroom. The case is closed. This is the practical word. The verdict has been handed down. The case is closed. The record is sealed. All charges dismissed. And now the chosen one has a decision to make. To stay in the courtroom, rehearsing the charges that have already been dismissed, or to walk out of the courtroom and into the life that the dismissed charges were preventing. Too many chosen ones receive the verdict of heaven and then continue to live as though the charges still stand. They carry the weight of accusations that have been dismissed. They allow the old verdicts of people who did not have the full picture to continue governing how they see themselves and what they believe they are allowed to step into. Walk out, chosen one. The door is open. The case is closed. The verdict is final. And what is outside the courtroom is the life that was always designated for you, the one that could not fully begin while the case was still pending, the one that the dismissed charges were holding back. It is waiting. Walk toward it, with the full authority of a person who has been cleared by the highest court that exists, not tentatively, not with one eye looking back at the accusations. Forward, into what the verdict has released. The case is closed. Your life is open. Walk into it. Number 8. The record of your failures was not used against you. It was covered. This is the part of the verdict that chosen ones sometimes find hardest to receive. The the genuine mistakes, the real failures, the moments that were not false accusations but accurate ones, the times you actually fell short, said the wrong thing, made the wrong choice, allowed fear or selfishness or weakness to produce something you are not proud of. Those things are in the record too. And the accuser brought them forward, presented them with confidence, used them as the most persuasive part of the case, because they are real and they cannot be argued away by denial. But the judge who reviewed them did not weigh them on the same scale the accuser used. He weighed them against something the accuser could not present as evidence: the covering, the redemption that applies to every genuine failure of a chosen one who has brought that failure to God in honesty. The blood that covers does not erase what happened. It addresses it fully, completely, in a way that removes its standing as a charge. The accuser can present it, but the judge looks at what covers it and rules that it cannot stand as the basis of a verdict. Your genuine failures were not ignored, they were covered. And what is covered cannot be used to condemn the one over whom the covering stands. Number 9, this verdict releases you to step into your calling without the weight of old accusations. There was something the pending case was doing to you even before the verdict came. It was creating a weight, a hesitation, a quiet voice in the background of everything you tried to step into that said, "Who are you to do this?" You know what they said about you. You know what you have done. You know the charges that are out there. How can someone under accusation walk forward with the confidence that this calling requires? That weight is lifted now. The case is closed. The charges are dismissed. And the chosen one who was hesitating under the weight of a pending verdict is now free to move with the full confidence of someone who has been cleared. Not cleared because they were perfect. Cleared because the highest court reviewed everything and found that the covering is real and the grace is sufficient, and the calling that was placed on this life was placed by someone who knew everything about this person before he placed it. Walk into the calling now, without the weight of what was brought against you, without the hesitation of someone who is not sure they are allowed to stand where they are being called to stand, with the full authority of a person over whom the verdict of the highest court has been spoken. All charges dismissed. Walk free. Number 10. The same God who dismissed the charges is the God walking with you into what comes next. This is the promise that seals everything else in this message. The judge who reviewed your case and issued the verdict of dismissal is not a distant authority who handed down a ruling and then moved on to the next case. He is the God who is personally invested in the life of the chosen one he just cleared. He does not dismiss the charges and then step back. He dismisses the charges and then steps forward into the next season alongside the person he just defended, into the calling that the dismissed charges were blocking, into every room and every challenge and every new level that the cleared chosen one is now free to enter. You are not walking into the next chapter alone. You are walking into it with the one who fought for your case and won it, who knows your full record and chose to defend you anyway, who sees where you are going and has already been there preparing what you will need when you arrive. Walk forward, chosen one, not with the weight of what was brought against you, with the covering of the one who answered every charge on your behalf. The case is closed. The verdict is final. And the life that was always meant for you is now fully open. Number 11, stop rehearsing what has been dismissed. This is the word that most chosen ones need to hear after a season of accusation. The verdict has come. The charges are dismissed. And yet the mind keeps returning to the courtroom, keeps replaying the charges, keeps rehearsing the defense that is no longer needed, keeps living as though the case is still pending when the judge has already ruled. The enemy knows the verdict has been handed down. He cannot change it, but he can try to keep you living as though it has not been, by keeping the accusations alive in your own thinking, by replaying the words that were spoken against you until they feel more real than the verdict that dismissed them, by convincing you that even if the court said dismissed, the charges still define who you are. They do not. A dismissed charge carries no weight. It does not follow you. It does not define you. It is not part of the record that governs what you are allowed to do next. Stop rehearsing it. Stop giving the dismissed charges mental real estate they are no longer entitled to occupy. The courtroom is behind you. Everything in front of you is the life that the dismissed charges were blocking. Choose to live in the verdict, not in the accusation. The verdict is what is true now. Number 12. The people who brought charges against you cannot reopen a case that God has closed. This matters practically, because they will try. The people who built the case against you do not receive the verdict with grace. They do not accept the dismissal easily. And so they look for ways to keep the narrative alive, to reintroduce the charges in new contexts, to remind people of what they said even after the court has ruled. But they do not have the authority to reopen what God has closed. A case dismissed at the highest court cannot be reinstated by a lower court. The verdict of the celestial judge cannot be overruled by the opinion of people who do not sit in that court. When the accusations resurface, and they may, you do not have to re-enter the courtroom to defend yourself again. The defense has already been made. The verdict has already been issued. You are not required to relitigate what has already been settled. Stand in the verdict. Not with aggression toward the ones still trying to press charges, with the quiet, grounded confidence of someone who knows which court holds authority over their life, and whose verdict on that life has already been declared. They cannot reopen what God closed. Rest in that. Number 13. The season that follows a dismissal is a season of restoration. In the natural world, when charges are dismissed and a person walks free, there is often a process of restoration, of rebuilding what the accusation period cost, of recovering what was taken during the time the case was pending, of returning to the places the charges had blocked access to. The same principle operates in the spiritual. The season following the dismissal of charges against a chosen one is not just a return to the way things were before the accusation season. It is a season of restoration, of God actively returning what the enemy's accusations cost, the reputation that was damaged, the relationships that were strained by what was said, the opportunities that were closed because of the narrative that was built, the confidence that was shaken by the weight of being accused. All of it is subject to restoration in the season that follows a heavenly dismissal. This restoration does not always come immediately. It comes faithfully, piece by piece, evidence by evidence, as the truth that the verdict was based on becomes increasingly visible to the people who were influenced by the accusations, as God moves on your behalf in ways that speak more clearly than any defense you could have mounted on your own. Stay in position for the restoration. Do not hide away in embarrassment about what was said. Walk forward in the confidence of the verdict, and let the life you live be the evidence that changes the narrative. Number 14. The charges were meant to define you. God used them to refine you. This is the redemptive truth that sits underneath everything the accusation season produced. What the accuser designed as a defining verdict, God used as a refining process. The charges that were intended to tell the final word about who you are became instead the fire through which something was removed from you that needed to go, and something was built in you that could only be built through that specific kind of pressure. What was removed? The part of you that was depending on human approval for its stability. The part that needed everyone to think well of you in order to feel secure. The part that could be shaken by what people said because it had not yet found the kind of grounding that does not depend on human opinion. The accusation season stripped that away, painfully, because things that have grown into the foundations of your sense of self do not come away gently, but they came away. And what remains is something more solid. A foundation that is not built on what people think of you, built on what God has said about you. And what God has said is not subject to revision based on what your accusers brought to court. They meant it to define you as what they said you were. God used it to define you as someone whose identity does not bend to accusation. That is a stronger person than the one who entered the accusation season, and it is the person the next season of your life requires. Number 15. You are now free to go where the accusations told you that you could not go. This is perhaps the most practical implication of the dismissal. The accusations were working as a boundary, telling you that certain spaces were not for you. Certain callings were too high for someone with your record. Certain people would not receive you if they knew what was said. Certain doors would stay closed because of the narrative that had been built. Those boundaries were built on charges that have been dismissed. And dismissed charges do not govern where a chosen one is allowed to go. The The spaces that felt closed are not closed by any authority that can stand over the celestial court's verdict. The calling that felt too elevated for someone under accusation is not too elevated for someone who has been cleared. The people who were influenced by the narrative will encounter you as you are now and form new conclusions based on the truth the verdict reflects. Go where you were told you could not go, not in defiance, in the quiet authority of someone who knows the verdict over their life. Not rushing to prove the accusers wrong, simply walking into what was always prepared for you, with the cleared record that the highest court has established. The doors are open, chosen one. Walk through them. Number 16. Let gratitude be the response to the verdict, not relief alone. When a verdict of dismissal comes, there is relief. The weight of the pending case lifts. The burden of the accusation season has an ending. The constant pressure of being defined by charges you knew were not the full truth is released. But do not stop at relief. Let the response go deeper, into genuine, full-weight gratitude for the defender who took your case when you could not fully defend yourself, for the judge who reviewed the complete record and let the full truth determine the outcome, for the covering that addressed what needed to be addressed and left the record clear, for the grace that is greater than every charge that was brought. Gratitude in response to a verdict of dismissal is not just an emotional response. It is a spiritual posture, the posture of a chosen one who recognizes that they did not earn this verdict, that the clearing was an act of grace, that the grace is not something to move past quickly, but something to receive deeply and carry forward as the ongoing awareness of what God did when the case was stacked against them. Be grateful, chosen one, fully, for the verdict, for the one who issued it, and for the life that opens on the other side of all charges dismissed. Number 17. The world will see the difference in you after the verdict. There is something visible about a person who has been through an accusation season and come out the other side with their faith intact and the verdict of heaven over their life. Something in the way they carry themselves, in the quietness of their confidence, in the absence of the need to prove themselves that exists in people who are still trying to win a verdict that has already been handed down. People who encounter you in this season will feel the difference. They may not be able to name it, but they will sense that something has settled, that the person in front of them is not defending or performing or carrying the weight of an ongoing case. They are walking in a cleared verdict, and that freedom is visible in ways that words cannot fully describe. Let them see it, not as a statement, as the natural expression of a person who knows they have been cleared by the highest authority that exists, who carries the peace that comes not from the absence of accusation, but from the verdict that has addressed every accusation. That peace is the testimony, and it speaks more powerfully than any defense you could have mounted during the accusation season. Number 18. This is not the end of your story. It is the opening of its most significant chapter. The dismissal of all charges is not the conclusion. It is the clearing of the way for what comes next. The accusation season was blocking something, not permanently, but it was creating a delay in the full unfolding of what God has prepared for this chosen one's life. The charges have been dismissed, the delay has ended, and what was being prepared on the other side of the accusation season is now accessible in a way it was not before. Go forward with that awareness. The chapter opening now was prepared by a God who knew how the case would end before it began, who was arranging what comes after the verdict while the verdict was still being processed, who is never late and never surprised and never scrambling to catch up. Everything needed for the next chapter is already in place. The connections, the opportunities, the provision, the right people. It was all being prepared during the accusation season. And now that the case is closed and the chosen one is free to move, what was prepared is ready to be entered. Walk into it, with the cleared record of a person the celestial court has ruled in favor of, with the peace of someone who knows the highest court has spoken, with the faith of a chosen one who has been through the fire of accusation and come out on the other side not consumed, but refined, all charges dismissed, all doors open, all of heaven moving on your behalf. That is the verdict. That is the truth. And now, chosen one, that is your life. If this message found you in your season, then share it with someone who is still carrying charges that heaven has already dismissed. Like this video and let the verdict reach those who need to hear it. Subscribe to this channel because what is coming next was written for the chosen one walking into freedom. And comment below with the word dismissed because that is what the charges are. God bless you, chosen one. Walk free. Thumbnail text, all charges dismissed. Walk free. Number 19. Forgive the ones who brought the charges. It completes your freedom. This is the final step in walking fully free from the accusation season. Not for their sake alone, for yours. The chosen one who walks out of the courtroom with the verdict but carries bitterness toward the ones who brought the charges is not fully free. The bitterness is a chain, not one the accuser placed on you, one you placed on yourself in response to what they did. Forgiveness does not mean what they did was acceptable. It does not mean the charges were fair or the accusations were true. It means you are releasing the grip of what they did so it cannot continue to occupy space in you that belongs to the next season. Joseph forgave his brothers, not because what they did was right, because he could see that God had used even their wrong actions for a purpose that was greater than their intention. You are not required to feel warmly toward the people who accused you. You are invited to release them to God, to let the judge who reviewed their testimony also be the judge who addresses what they did in bringing it. Release them, not for them, for you, so that the freedom the verdict produced is complete, so that the life opening in front of you is entered without the weight of what is behind you still attached. All charges dismissed, all bitterness released, all of you free to move forward. That is the full verdict, and it is yours. God bless you, chosen one.